Hello and welcome to this edition of Standard Deviation, my column and video series. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor at ThePrint, and I'm going to be talking to you about my latest column on how the Modi government is turning into a big brother and it's being overly intrusive in some of its financial policies. Now, there's a fine line between being a helpful, paternalistic government that takes necessary decisions on behalf of the people and being an overbearing one that intrudes into what should ideally not be any of the government's business. The Indian government has largely been the former. That is, it's taken these paternalistic steps in the interests of people. However, recent steps the Modi government has taken, such as increasing the tax collected at source on international transactions, underscore the shift it is taking to becoming too overbearing. This shift also reveals a couple of paradoxes in the way that the government thinks about the people, that is, you and me. On the one hand, the government is rightfully proud of the steps it has taken to enhance financial literacy and financial inclusion. It has taken a lot of positive steps on this. But on the other hand, it also takes steps to infantilize the people by banning anything that could even potentially harm them. The whole point of financial literacy is to empower people to make decisions on their own. The second paradox is that this infantilization is accompanied by a significant increase in the compliance burden on the people. So which is it? Are the people to be coddled, or are they savvy enough to comply with complex tax rules? A paternalistic government is one that takes decisions on behalf of the people as it considers their judgment on the issue to be subpar. So there are laws mandating that people wear seat belts or that bike riders wear helmets. The assumption is that given a choice, people will willfully put themselves in danger by not wearing seatbelts or helmets, and so the law is needed to force them to not throw away their lives. This is correct. Now, perhaps the earliest financial paternalistic step taken by the government of India was the promulgation of the Employees Provident Fund Ordinance in 1951. This ordinance and the subsequent act that was passed the following year set up a system under which people were forced to save towards their retirement. The largely correct assumption was, and continues to be, that people aren't prudent about saving and will be left penniless when they stopped working. It was also a valid concern in 1951 that most people simply didn't have the means or the financial knowledge to save. Now, flip forward to 2023. While financial literacy has certainly improved markedly since then, as has access to banking services, the ability to save remains quite woeful. The latest World Bank data for 2022 shows that just 23.5% of Indians saved in any form. This is only marginally higher than the 22.6% for South Asia as a whole and far lower than the 32.5% average for lower middle income countries, of which India is also a part. So it makes sense that the Provident Fund rules remain in force. There needs to be a law that kind of forces people to save. What makes less sense was the RBI's hurry in 2018 to prohibit the use of cryptocurrencies. While not a ban exactly, the central bank basically instructed all the entities it regulates, which are banks, NBFCs, regional rural banks, etc., not to have anything to do with cryptocurrencies or those who are involved with them. Basically, people couldn't use their bank accounts to buy or sell cryptocurrencies, which meant that the Indian rupee couldn't be converted into cryptocurrencies and vice versa. It was pretty much a ban, it just wasn't called one. Now, if the reason for this was to protect the stability of the financial system, then that at least would have been understandable. That's one of the jobs of the RBI. Instead, the RBI said the reason for its decision was to protect the people from the various risks associated in dealing with such virtual currencies. Banning a product or activity where people can lose their savings toes that line between paternalism and being big brother. My own belief when it comes to these things is that buyer beware. At most, the RBI should have set up a fraud redressal mechanism. However, if a user loses their money because the crypto asset they put money in lost value, then that's the same risk as investing in stocks or mutual funds. Too bad. While only El Salvador has allowed cryptocurrencies as legal tender so far, there really wasn't a need for India to rush to join the small group of countries that had banned them. Thankfully, in 2020, the Supreme Court overturned the RBI's decision. The government too seems to have changed its stance. While its 2019 draft bill on cryptos was named the Banning of Cryptocurrency and Regulation of Official Digital Currency Act, this was softened to simply be the Cryptocurrency and Regulation of Official Digital Currency Bill by 2021. That is, the word ban was removed from the title. The government's current stand on cryptocurrency transactions, that is, to tax profits but otherwise leave users to their own fates, is a substantial step back from the RBI's overbearing attitude, which is quite a compromise, it must be said. A more recent overly protective step by the government was to prohibit online betting. The argument here too was that too many people were losing too much money. Rather than investing in increasing awareness about the risks of betting and the pitfalls of gambling addiction, the government's solution is to implement bans. All this really does is to push these activities into the shadows. Now, it can be argued that banning cryptocurrencies and online betting, while intrusive, are still in the interests of the people. But the government has now progressed to implementing intrusive rules that not only have no benefit for the people, but also forces the taxpayers to do the government's job for it. The 20% tax collected at source, or TCS, on international transactions is an unnecessary mechanism to track international transactions and falls into the big brother category. It's clear that the government wants to track how much money you spend abroad. The government's argument also is that the TCS isn't a real tax since it will be offset against the final tax to be paid at the end of the year. It also says that the 20% rate won't be a burden on high net worth individuals, the bulk of those who would have to pay the TCS. What it conveniently forgets to mention is that the reason this will apply only to high net worth individuals is that they've brought in a limit of rupees 7 lakh under which the TCS won't apply. But what they don't mention is that this 7 lakh limit was brought in only in retaliation to the outrage that the rules initially caused. This outrage was there even amongst those who supported the government. Now, what the government is also quiet about is that the precise point of the digital transactions push, which started with demonetization, was that digital transactions would be easier to track than cash transactions. So what happened? Was linking our PAN, Aadhaar, bank account and mobile number not enough? The only workable solution the government could think of was to confiscate people's money and give it back only if all the rules are complied with? Why is it that the people who want to withdraw more than 20 lakh of their own money in cash from their own account have to provide physical copies of their PAN and Aadhaar when these are already linked to their bank accounts? What happened to Digital India? Why must the citizens fall over themselves to give the government everything it needs to track transactions when the government itself boasts of all the steps it has taken to ease compliance and improve its own efficiency? Yes, Prime Minister Modi talked about minimum government, but nobody thought he meant that minimum government meant making the citizenry do the government's job for it. On that note, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching.